Good evening and welcome to Coach World TV. My name is Terry Yoffe, and tonight as my guest I have Suparna Malhotra. And Suparna is a certified co-active coach and co-active leader, and she hails from the UK, and she lives here now. Hi, Suparna.
Hi, Terry.
How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you for having me
You're
on here.
very welcome. So, Suparna and I met, I would say back in September, when we both did a workshop together called The Bigger Game. And I got to know Suparna, and what a delight she is. And she has a passion, and a little bit different than what I've certainly worked with here on Coach World TV. Her passion is about bringing the end to gender-based violence, and that is going to be our program tonight. So I'm very excited to have you and to hear all about your passion and what this means to you. So tell us a little bit about this, and then we'll see where this goes.
Absolutely. Thank you, Terry.
You're very welcome.
This is a passion. It comes from a place of being very, very angry and helpless and not knowing what to do, hearing atrocious stories of violence taking place around the world and even on university campuses, to coming to a place of, well, what can be done that's more peaceful and more gentle? And I came to the decision that actually it's not us against them. We have to work together. And by together I mean the men and the women, to understand why this happens and what causes it and what brings a person to do something like that to another human being. And that's where it all started.
So I know when we had spoken several times, you mentioned about some of what you had seen being in India. I mean, I may have this wrong. What you had seen, Suparna hails from the UK, but also grew up in India.
And Kuwait.
And Kuwait,
Middle East.
is right. And might have seen firsthand some of this. Am I accurate or not?
To be honest with you, Kuwait, it was an interesting place to grow up. It's not exactly the kind of place that I experienced great respect for women, and with women not having a lot of rights, and frankly speaking, women being abused. And my family, fortunately, are wonderful, and I was raised in a very great way, very respectful way, to treat others with respect, but not everybody is that fortunate. And I think that experience, having been in the Middle East and born in Delhi, I was really, just like a lot of other people, taken aback by the very high-profile rape that occurred in Delhi, in my, where I was born, on a bus, on a public bus.
Tell us about that, please.
It was a 23-year-old girl, a student that went out for an evening out with her friend, a male friend, and was raped and tortured on a bus, on a public bus in Delhi, and not very late at night, 9 p.m. It was very, very atrocious. I couldn't bring myself to read about it for a very long time because it was so horrific. And once I came out of that place of being so angry and wanting to just do something horrible to those guys, I actually came out of it thinking, I want to know why they did that. What would drive them to do that? And what can be done to prevent something like that from occurring in the future? That is a big, big task, and I wish I could sit here with you right now and say, I know the answer, and I know what to do to stop this from occurring, but I do know a few things. And through the coaching that we've been doing over the last year, I've been doing the coaches training and the leadership course and the program. I've learned very much about how important it is to look inside ourselves and to learn value and worth and see that in other people as well. And I think that anybody doing anything as horrible can't possibly like themselves very much, which is a very sad situation. So how can we help other people to really love themselves and love the place they're in and value themselves, so that they don't take out their frustrations on other human beings?
Especially women.
Especially women, because they're seemingly the weaker of the two sexes.
It's so amazing. I've had, the good fortune to spend time with Suparna and to listen to her thoughts around this and her passion around it. I'm going to kind of circle back to this in a minute, but you haven't been a coach forever.
No.
So prior to becoming a coach, what did you do? And when was that aha moment when you said, I really want to become a coach?
I was in sales for a very long time, my career after both my degrees, and not having any idea what I wanted to do. And I left my job a couple of years ago, decided I was going to figure this out, and I did some contract work, and I trained. And I realized that, wow, I really like this, trying to help other people within corporations. Through which I met a coach, and I thought to myself, wow, a profession that's not counseling, but that can actually help other people, that's very interesting. And I researched extensively as to the programs. I even did a weekend course to get a taster of what it's all about. And I thought, this is it. This sounds wonderful, a wonderful little side thing to have in my tool belt. What I didn't realize was that it would change everything.
Yeah.
Change the way I think, I see the world, the way I interact with other people, and also open me up to much bigger things than just myself.
Yeah, and actually Suparna and I went to the same coaching school, I believe CTI.
Yes, we did.
And we both got our certification through CTI, I believe.
Yes, we did.
So having all of this coaching and doing the leadership program, doing the bigger game that we did together, what do you think was your bigger game after doing the workshop? What did you see as your vision for your bigger game moving forward, including this that we just spoke about, you know, how to try to help end gender-based violence?
So out of the bigger game workshop, which was wonderful, and what came out of it for me was that surprised me was the fact that I wanted to help empower girls and women, and it was the idea actually of from Kuwait of girls wearing a hijab and covering themselves and around shame, and how do we get people to let go of that hijab or that thing that covers their head that gives them confidence, and help them to learn who they are and empower them. And through the program, actually, it became clear to me, especially since this horrific incident, and there have been so many others all the time in December, that what I wanted to do was bring about a change to the way that the whole idea and thought behind gender-based violence and sexual violence was seen. And to do this, not through anger, but from a place of real, love for human beings and for love for people. And I've been trying to work on understanding how it is that me as a person, how could I possibly have love for example, for those 5 men that did this to the 23-year-old girl, how can I bring myself to do that? And how then would I be able to help them if I didn't have some kind of compassion for them? And so out of the idea of the gentle world sparked out of that for me. And that's what I'm working on, which is creating a world of gentle people, men and women, who want to learn about each other and respect each other rather than be at fighting ends with each other.
I think that's so ambitious, yet a very age-long issue and question about how we can stop this in the world. And just if you could wave a magic wand and really have a vision for how you would go about doing this. I don't even know if I'm putting you on the spot at this point. What would it be? How can you envision really making this dream come true?
I envision a world, and we're moving towards that, I believe, a new consciousness and a new awareness about the fact that we're not out to get each other in a negative way. We're here to work together, and so in my magic, if I could wave the wand, the world would be chasing after knowledge rather than money and power of a different sort, self-empowerment, that kind of power. And there would be, of course, no wars. And men and women, we are different, but yet we can't live without each other. We would learn to understand each other, and we would learn to put down our armaments and open ourselves up to learning about each other more and how we can collaborate and create sounds very cheesy and cliched, but a better world to live in.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's all right. It's a tall order.
It's a very tall
yeah,
order.
and I don't know if it's just one person at a time. If you could touch one person at a time, it's like as coaches, if we can transform and change one person, we've put one more person out there that's going to do good in the world.
Absolutely.
So,
it's a ripple effect.
Yeah, a ripple effect, exactly. And
Okay.
how, what just pops up for me is education. Much
Yes.
more education in perhaps countries where there isn't any, to educate people about this violence and this abuse.
Absolutely. Terry, education is such a key factor here, and it's not just for the kids, not for the children, but also for adults. This subject in this area is very taboo. People don't go around talking about rape and gender violence just in a very casual sense, and it's a very difficult subject. And for a lot of the women, and it usually is the women who are the victims, sadly, that have been through this on any scale, there's a huge amount of shame that's wrapped around it as well.
Sure.
They can't talk about it. It's something that's always buried inside of them that comes out and seeps out in many different ugly, negative ways. And they never get relief from that. And to be able to bring this out in the open so that women are not holding it in, or anybody who's a victim of such abuse and violence does not have to carry it themselves, and they can deal with it and heal in a better way, that would make a big difference.
And I mean, I'm just kind of guessing here because I don't know, but I'm just throwing out that in this country, I can't talk about India or Kuwait or other countries where there is the abuse, but here in this country, again, I don't know that there would be more opportunity to talk about it because sex education is given in schools, at least in the U.S.
Yes.
In, middle school. So everything about sex education and rape and all of that is discussed. And it might be much more out in the open where people might be able to talk about it. Again, I might be looking at a narrow perspective here, maybe big cities as opposed to small backwoods communities. Again, I'm not really attached to any of this because I don't really know. But do you have a sense or a take on the subject matter here in the U.S. versus other parts of the world?
Absolutely. I think that I understand there is sex education available, for example, in the U.S., and that might be okay, but the education of how a man or a boy should view a girl or a woman, how they should be treated, and vice versa, that is something that's not that comes from parentage as well. And there are very fortunate people who have great parentage that can raise their sons and their daughters to be a certain way and to be respectful. However, what about those unfortunate people that don't have access to that? And case in point, the Steubenville boys back in Ohio several months ago, they were star football players and students, yet they treated a girl with the utmost disrespect. If you remember, there were two boys that dragged around a very drunk girl who had no capability or capacity to say no, and that yes, they committed something very, very, very atrocious. They didn't have the right guidance, and I feel having the right kind of guidance, the right kind of role models, and the freedom to be able to express oneself in the ways that need to be is necessary, especially because boys are not They're told not to be very expressive. It's not a male, very masculine thing to do.
So what happens, I'm playing a little devil's advocate here, when, you know, we're trying to take a subject that's this big and, you know, trying to make heads or tails out of why this happens. I think it's a question that we could spend 12 hours here and we might not ever get to the answer,
Right.
as you said. But kids that are men, that are boys that are brought up in good environments and they go off and they do it anyway. Is it a matter of what triggers a kid into doing this? And sometimes circumstance and environment might not be the reason. Again,
No, it is a really big question, and I cannot pose to know the answer. However, there are certain aspects that I can possibly comment on, and it's the idea of, as I said, the parentage or the environment and having the right role models. But it's also, everybody has some kind of a little bit of a dark side. I mean, I have a bit of a temper. I admit it. I'm a little bit feisty sometimes.
right?
And at times, I have found myself, so if I'm feeling insecure or a little bit powerless, I might lash out, but not in a nasty way.
Right.
But if you put somebody else in the situation, you know, with a different kind of ego, feeling equally insecure, powerless, they might lash out in a worse way. And of course, people will always lash out at those who are seemingly weaker, who think they can get away with doing it too most of the time. That's one way to look at it. And the other thing is, how at the Bigger Game Conference Expo a few weeks ago in upstate New York, there were some wonderful, inspiring people, and one of the gentlemen there, he's a minister, Reverend James Mellon. He said something very interesting, and it was that I'm not quoting him directly, but essentially what he said was that the problems in the world are a crisis of identity. And he feels if we know who we are, that takes away a lot of angst. And a lot of the angst we do feel is about not knowing and feeling in some ways failure or inadequate. That's a very simplistic way of putting it. Of course, that's not at all.
Right.
It's a much bigger area to look at,
Of
and much
course.
bigger area to study.
Of
But
course. You know, there's a lot that can play into it: insecurity, confidence, identity. That could trigger, you know, someone to lash out. I mean, you know, if we have a bad hair day, if you will, you know, I might curse or do something like that. And, you know, it's about being in control of your instincts, of being in control of your emotions and not going out, although there are probably times I'd like to smack somebody here and there, but I'm not going to do that.
But you know otherwise.
Right. And as I said, this is such a great, passionate topic. So you, personally, would it be about working with these people, with men and women, and helping them see how they could push through their behavioral patterns and perhaps change? Something we were talking about, that there are coaches that do go into prisons and work with prisoners and really help them transform.
Yes.
And so this would be an equivalent of a different nature, but helping kids or grown-ups, because it's both young people and older that do commit these acts. So if, again, if you had your druthers as a coach, as a coactive leader, how would you like to go out in the world and really help?
Well,
I'm sure you're doing some of it now.
yeah, yes, it's definitely brewing. So my website, which is going to be up next week,
What's
called
the
it's thegentleworld.com, and that's a place for for conversation. And so the idea of the gentle world is actually to advance conversation between men and women and to bring men into the conversation because we can't do this on our own. The women can't go out there saying, oh no, we want an end to gender-based violence because it's not possible. We can't do it unless the men are on our side and that they understand that it's not just our issue, it affects them too. And some men, very prominent, are doing work on this already. There's one of my favorite TED Talks by Jackson Katz, who actually goes to universities and schools and does organize education sessions and workshops with boys to help them learn to express their emotions in a different way. One of our own leaders from CTI, Ken Mosman, is dear to me.
I know Ken.
And you know, for him as well, it's about expressing. It's about expressing yourself in a different way, expressing our dark side in a different way. But equally, it's also about women and girls learning that it's when to say no, and learning that they have a choice in the matter. They don't have to sit there and take it. So I have to bring this up. It's kind of a gruesome story, but in the Times of India today, two women chopped off the hands of their father-in-law who tried to molest them several times, which is a horrific story, but in a sense, it's, you know, women also have to learn that they have a choice, and it's not as easy as just saying you have a choice. It needs to be something that's trained, and then, you know, it's ingrained in them that they don't have a choice. Now, so the conversation thing is very, very important to me, and bringing the men into it. That's what is key as well.
So 2 points. One, what triggered in me was going around to schools and talking to high school kids and, you know, having a real conversation. That sounds brilliant for people to be doing that, and I love that concept that it, you know, can start there and they can at least learn some things. But the other is, as coaches, we don't do therapy.
No.
So how do you walk a line whereby you're staying true to being a coach, yet a lot of these kids might need some real therapy because the issues they have might not be solved, you know, solution-based with a coach?
Most definitely. And I was in a position while doing certification to have coached a few people and met a few people that have been in these situations, and perpetrators being their family members or a lot of times people you know, and sometimes they're caretakers, and it's a very scarring thing, and I don't believe that coaching alone can help, but it definitely is something that can add to the therapy or the other healing that they might have to do alongside it. Because there are certain matters such as self-confidence, self-worth,
absolutely,
that they would lose, and the ability to trust themselves, trust their decisions. Those are the things a coach can help with, and one of the areas, one of the commentators on the TED Talk video, who's male, pointed out the fact that actually men need to learn how to control their instincts and their thoughts, or their instincts, and that's important as well. And you mentioned the lady that's working in the prisons, one of the programs in a prison. One of the things they do teach those prisoners is they're the masters of their own mind. And if we all can learn that, then we can learn, as you say, to not smack somebody when we're upset or we're in a situation, but to use our mind in a positive way, to make better decisions. That's one of the things.
So what we're hearing is coaching alone, but a lot of other scaffolding.
Absolutely.
To really help people understand and get in touch with how they can control their own life and take control of their own life and, you know, stand in their own power. You know, I think men think they're standing in their power by raping, when
it's the easy
in
thing
fact
to do.
that's
it's the
not
tool
at
belt,
all. We don't have a whole lot of time left. What about doing a TED Talk for you?
Oh, that's a dream. That's a dream.
Yeah. Who do you know that you could talk to and get some intro into the whole world of TED Talk?
Actually, I have met a few people recently that are involved with the New York chapters of the Salon.
Okay.
That's something I'm very going to be pursuing very much. And also, I must mention that this whole idea of conversation, shifting consciousness, I will have an event in New York on the 9th of July that's going to be inviting in men and women to see how we can help each other, learn from each other,
great.
and advance this consciousness and shift this state of affairs.
Well, we could spend, I mean, we do have a few minutes, but we could spend another hour, I'm sure, talking about this, and I love the fact that you were able to come on the show and really talk about something that, at least as long as I've been doing Coach World TV, that we've never talked about. So this really opens up the conversation and dialogue for a lot of new types of topics and conversations about issues that are right in front of us but are not really talked about that much.
Scrubbing the rug.
Yeah, that is true. So what would you like to leave our audience with tonight? I know we've got another minute or so, 2 minutes to be exact, but what would you like to impart, if anything, to leave the audience with?
I think that it's important. Something that I really stress a lot is our impact. To notice our each individual's impact. What impact am I having that's going to cause a ripple effect that's going to go out in some way? And that is important. How am I treating myself? How am I treating others? And a lot of what the gentle world started out being as well is about being gentle with oneself, myself, so that I can be gentle then with somebody else that I come across. And it's actually not as easy as it sounds.
No,
it's not
not at
easy
all.
to be gentle with oneself.
No,
And
that's true.
when put in a situation where we might be threatened, or, as I said, insecure or uncomfortable, it's not the easiest thing to do at all. And so it's something to be conscious and aware of, and to bring this out in the open. This happens all the time. It happens on our doorstep. It happens to you next door, to your family members, to
yeah,
your friends.
right.
To not make it so taboo that they have to swallow the whole thing by themselves. Get it out in the open.
Right.
And as Reverend James Mellon would say, let it come out of the closet.
Well, I want to thank you so much, and I would love to have you on the show in a year and see where all this progresses
Thank
to.
you. I would love
Because
that.
it's great conversation, and I so appreciate your being on the show.
Thank you so much
It's been
for
an
having me. I
absolute
appreciate
pleasure
it.
having you here tonight. And I want to say thank you to our audience for being here and listening to our conversation and dialogue, and hope you'll tune in next week when my guest will be Deborah Regal, who is a storyteller, coach, and many other things. So good night.